The most petty and dramatic feuds are those that come between friends, and there's no better bust-up in the annals of philosophy than the row between two titans of existentialism, Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre. Camus was from a poor Algerian family. Sartre from a bourgeois French background. They both sided with the French resistance during World War II, had communist sympathies, and thought cigarettes were extraordinarily dope. They womanized together and liked each other. The only bump before the blow-up came when Simone de Beauvoir, Sartre's lover, offered to sleep with Camus. But what displeased Sartre was that Camus turned her down, not that she'd offered in the first place. Both men were existentialists, although they disliked the term. "I am not what I am," said Sartre. "I am a stranger to myself," Camus echoed. They worried about how to make meaning in an essentially absurd, godless world. It must be created authentically from within, they claimed, because we are all condemned to be free. It was this last bit that sparked the breakup in 1952. As an existentialist, Sartre cared about the radical freedom of man, but he was also a Marxist who thought history was at the mercy of material historical forces, leaving little room for personal autonomy. At the time, he was a fan of the Soviet Union and Stalin, the guy that crushed Eastern Europe and imprisoned his people in gulags. Camus couldn't wrap his head around Sartre's support for Russia's twisted version of communism. When Camus pointed out the contradiction, Sartre told him to shove it. So what's the real issue? On one level, it was about the value of human life. Is it all right to sacrifice people for the sake of principles? Or is life so valuable that killing can't be justified in the name of an ideal? Looked at another way, the dispute was about pessimism versus optimism. Sartre didn't think much of human nature. Hell is other people, he wrote. But Camus had a slightly more upbeat humanist outlook. Because Sartre valued individual humans less, it was easier for him to embrace the killing that came with communism. Camus thought that was nuts. It was the end. A few years later, when Camus was receiving his Nobel Prize, he said his relationship to Sartre was outstanding, because the best relationships are those in which we do not see one another. Camus died in a car accident in 1960. A few years before his own death 20 years later, Sartre reflected on his former rival. "He was probably my last good friend," he said.